Good evening. Hope you're all doing well. Baruch Hashem, we're starting a new parak tonight on the top of Nedarim Daf Mem Tes. We'll be getting into some splitting of hairs in regards to languages about Bishul. Is Bishul the same as Tzli? We know we have chakiras like this in the world of Basar B'chalav. We know that the Isser of creating Basar B'chalav is with Bishul. Okay, so can you own stock in Burger King? Because that's not Bishul proper. It's Tigun, they're frying, it's really just melting on, is that considered Bishul? So applications of that are found here in minor form, but we'll see some of that over here. A reminder again that tomorrow and the next day, I'll be posting recordings. I don't yet know how Thursday is going to work. Right now, the way Thursday works is I can post during the day. If I run out of time, and I'll let you know. Well, keep you posted. Probably not, and I'll probably have to do Friday. I have to see how the next 2 days go. I'm not sure.
Don't go away.
Very practical. Yeah, very practical. I'll tell that to the people who I'm about to raise money from, that I just couldn't come to pick up their check because Michael needed me at Daf Yomi. I'll tell them. I agree with you in my heart, but
they'll understand because it's for Michael.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah.
If you replace the money that I was about to fundraise. All right, says the new Mishnah, new parak, hanoder mina mevushal. If a person makes a neder against foods that are mevushal in the form of cooking of mevushal, then muter b'tzli v'shaluk. Then it's permissible to eat foods that are tzli, that are roasted, and shaluk. Now, this is interesting because the word shaluk is subject to a machlokas rishonim. If you look in the Mefarish, the word shaluk on the second line reads mevushal yoser midai. It was mevushal, but it was over mevushal, cooked too much. The Ran doesn't like this, and the Ran at the beginning of the parak, halfway down the page, writes shaluk on the third line of that section, bashil velo bashil. He says it has to be that it's undercooked, because if something's overcooked, it was already in the status of bishul. You can't remove it. So the Mefarish gives a typical Shas definition of shaluk, but the Ran says it's impossible. It doesn't make any sense, and therefore he says shaluk is undercooked, even though the Mefarish is right that this is the typical definition. Either way, mutter. Amar, if a person says konam tavshil she'eni toam, there's these foods I'm not going to eat, or food I'm not going to eat, and not speaking about the method of cooking, but cooked items in general, not about the method. So there the Gemara says aser b'maisek derurach. There you're not allowed to eat foods out of a pot where there's a lot of liquid, there's moisture. Umutter be'ava. Let's say you do pan-fried potato kugel. So that would be considered a version of bishul, where it's at the end it's ave. So that's mutter. That's not considered a regular tavshil. Ma'asek derurach is going to be aser, and mutter ba'ave. That food under the umbrella of that konam would be mutter to eat. And as well, mutter bebeitza turmuta. This is a specific type of egg. Uvidalas haramutza, a specific type of gourd. These would also be mutter to eat as well. The Gemara is going to ask about this. That's case 1 of the Mishnah. Case 2. Hanoder mimaisek dera. A person says, from maisek dera, I'm going to limit myself. Ein aser ella mimaise rischasa. It has to be only from foods that are actually boiled. Pots are made for boiling. So if you want to boil some noodles, that's what would be aser. Amar konam hayor lekdera she'eni toim. If a person makes a neder, anything that goes into a pot, I will not taste. Aser b'cholam isbashim lekdera. Then anything that's cooked in the pot, is going to be aser. Again, as I mentioned 20 times already, the language here is so similar to one another, it's hard to really appreciate the difference in language. In the English parlance and our comfortable, mamaloshin, we can easily parse these things out. This is just a little harder. Just look at the first case, hanoder mina mevushal, and then kodem tavshil. Like they're so similar, but we have to recognize that this is just not our language. It's the way that they talk. The first one, mevushal, is speaking about the mode of cooking, and tavshil is speaking about foods broadly. So we have to remember that we're just not experts in this language. The Gemara.
The last one. So if he would put like a rotisserie chicken, that would be okay, right? Because it's not
Correct. It's something that's not cooked in a pot. Sli or Lemashal, let's say you're baking something, afia. Afia is not bishul. Bishul is cooking with a liquid medium.
But it's still something that goes in a pot.
Right. Well, that's typical. Right. So here we're saying anything that you'll cook in a pot. That's it's really just about the pot. What if you roast in a pot? It's a good shiur in the Rishonim, because that's technically not bishul. But here the Gemara's language, the Mishnah's language seems to be anything that goes in a pot. It's a good question. Now, we had learned in the beginning of our Mishnah that if a person says the language of mevushal, the very specific language of mevushal, and that's his restriction, that it would then be mutter to eat foods that are tzli and shaluk. However, Tanya, the Brisa, writes at the open of the Gemara, 9 lines down or so, Rabbi Yoshia Aser, he says no. Rabbi Yoshia Oser, he says that one is not allowed to eat sli and shalak. In other words, is the word mevushal specific or is it general? If the word mevushal is specific, then sli is different than mevushal and shalak is different than mevushal. If the word the word mevushal is general, then who cares? We're talking about cooking in general, cooking loosely, not cooking specifically. And says the Gemara, "V'afal pisha in raya l'davar zecher l'davar." And Rav Yoshia has a beautiful raya for his shita that sli should be aser, because the pasuk says by the korban pesach shneimar vayivashelu hapesach ba'esh kamishpat. Look at the first word in that pasuk, bishul. Sli yesham rachmana. So we know that the korban pesach was sli. Yet the pasuk says bishul. Haraya that the word mevushal is a broad word and not a specific word. Therefore, Rav Yoshia says that even if you make a neder in the language of mevushal, doesn't matter. Sli is going to be usher too. You can't eat anything out of that house or out of that kitchen or whatever the locale is.
But the ones who say that sli and mevushal are not the same thing, how do they define mevushal?
No, it's not that. It's that in this context of using the word bishul, it is not a specific language. Everyone agrees when it comes to basar b'chalav that if you bake basar b'chalav together, that's not the isur deraisa bishul. Or that's I don't know. I shouldn't say everybody agrees. I presume that that's the case. There we make firm distinctions between cooking in a liquid medium and cooking in a baking medium or a frying medium or a roasting, whatever it is.
But so bishul is definitely with water, right?
The classical definition of bishul, yes. But here, because the Torah uses the words vayvashlu loosely, because obviously it was tzli, it was roasting. So therefore, Rav Yoshaya says that over here, if a person that makes a neder about mevushal, so then obviously his brain was thinking wider, thinking a little bit more broadly. We're going to reject this in a minute, but that was the sheet of Rav Yoshia. And the Gemara says a third of the way down, Lema, perhaps we can say that that the difference between our Mishnah, where mevushal was specific, and therefore tzli and shalak were mutter under the guise of that nether, but Rav Yoshia was aser. What's the machlokas between the Rav Yoshia? Rav Yoshia savar halach achar lashon Torah. We look at the way that the Torah uses the word mevushal, and clearly we see the word mevushal was interchangeable with tzli. The Tana Dilan, our Tana savar b'nedarim halach achar lashon b'nei adam. What's the way that people talk? So you're right. Mevushal in the pasuk means tzli. But that's not the way people talk. When people are making a neder, they're being very specific. So therefore, maybe that's the machlokas between the Tan of our Mishnah Rav Yoshia. The Gemara rejects this. Lo, that's not correct. Tekule Alma, everyone agrees. B'nedarim hachar achar lashon b'nei adam. We don't care about the pasuk in Chumash under these circumstances. The lashon b'nei adam is what governs. Fine. If that's true, what then is the machlokas between our Mishnah and the Tana of Rav Yoshia? Marki Asre, Marki Asre. It just depends on the locale in which you live. Be'asra, the Tana Dilan, the author of our Mishnah, there, Litzli, Karu Litzli, Ulemevushal, Karu Lemevushal. They use the right words. That's what the words are for. They use the right words. Kasha and the pasuk. Why did it say Mevushal? Good question. But Be'asra, the Rav Yoshia, and where Rav Yoshia lived, Afilu Tzli, Karu Mevushal, they were looser. They were more broad with their language, more generalized. So there, when you would say Mevushal, you meant Tzli. When you'd say Tzli, you might have meant Mevushal, and no one would hold you to it. So the Gemara says everyone agrees as Lashon B'nei Adam, but the Lashon B'nei Adam was different in those places. But it's all about Lashon B'nei Adam. What about the fact that Rav Yoshia brought a pasuk? We had said that Afal Pi Shein Rai L'Davar Zeicha L'Davar. We quoted a pasuk. V'Hakra Nasibla. Rav Yoshia had a pasuk that supported him. So what do you mean Lashon B'nei Adam? He brought a Raya Brura as to how we know that Bishul and Tzli are interchangeable. The Gemara says that's Asmachta B'Alma. It's not a light hint from the pasuk, but it doesn't actually matter.
That's what it said.
But according to your logic, the Gemara's pushback right now is a little ridiculous. Huh? You're right. The whole flow of the Gemara is very strange because he said the Gemara is very weird. We shouldn't have even. Respectfully, this question was unnecessary. But the Gemara is bothered. I don't know. Maybe in shiur, when Rabbi Yoshia was talking about this, he just quoted the pasuk, and we're answering now that it's nasmachta. Maybe the framing of
Giveir asks why you bring a pasuk from Divrei Yomim.
Wow, gorgeous question.
Oh,
gorgeous.
Right. The problem would be that this Gemara's final question would be impossible to ask. And plus in Divrei Yomim, maybe you can call it up, a zecher or whatever.
Well, we would have just made the blanket chakira We would have just made the blanket chakira that the Nedarim, exactly. Nedarim have their own rules.
Great question.
What's the Yud Lamed at the end there?
I don't know. The H small one, but there's no H small. I don't know.
What's the pasuk?
We shelter the alcohol. We shelter the alcohol. Purchase for A. We shelter the alcohol. Look how much you guys young to play.
Yesh la'ayin.
That's a great question.
Excellent. Okay, 2/3 of the way down at the two dots.
So the point is, one of the others is very close.
Well, that piece is the general rules are clear, which is Nedarim or Lashon B'nei Adam, and Rav Yoshia was just his Ba'asra, the Rav Yoshaya. They were using these languages interchangeably. The baseline is Pashut, but this piece is very true. The Shakla B'Tarya is difficult. Okay. So we had said in our Mishnah, on the second line of our Mishnah, we said Konim Shatav Shanitom. We said some things are aser, like Maisik Rach, and then we said that other things are mutter. We had said that food that is thick is mutter. We said the beitzim are from Tormuta were mutter, and the Dalas Harmus are all mutter. The Gemara says, I don't understand. Nadar. These things are cooked. You don't eat eggs raw unless you're like running a marathon. Nobody eats raw eggs. That's not normal. You eat cooked eggs. How do you cook eggs? You boil them. Or you roast them, whatever. But they're cooked. That's a normal way to cook them. So the Gemara asks the question in like a bit of a shield. It's not a clear question. But what the Gemara is saying is that some of the things that you said in the Mishnah that are mutter under the parameters of this neder are nispashel. So why would you say that it's mutter? The Gemara responds, Amar Abaye, Hai Tana, the author of our Mishnah holds, Kol midi demis achil bei rifta tavshil karule. Anything that's eaten with bread has the definition of being a tavshil, and therefore, by exclusion, anything that doesn't get eaten with bread, namely the eggs and the dalas from our Mishnah, that's not called bishul. It's not called a tavshil. Shouldn't say it's not called bishul. It's not called a tavshil. So now I'm going to make this distinction as I did before, but we're going to make it sharper now. We're not asking did it go through the process of bishul. We're asking is it a food? And we define food as that which is eaten with bread. Everything else is condiments. Everything else is the gravy. But it's very possible. But these types of foods in the Mishnah were clearly brought by the Tanna Kama to say that they were not being eaten with bread. And the Gemara is going to bring a raya right now. But yes, it would of course have to be whatever the norms are. But it doesn't take. We can sit at Shabbos tables here and do things that are weird. It's not.
Right. They had a little food with their bread. We have a little bread food.
Yeah, true. Especially the calorie chasers, where you have to be careful.
Well, smart. Well, because we have enough food.
Yeah.
Keep the bread content.
But back in the day,
When all you had was bread.
that's true. Back in the day, that was their main source of.
It was just something to dip in.
Yeah, I mean, we're
We're
going to see today how far you have to go for a piece of steak. It's a beautiful Gemara today. Also, the Gemara today is going to teach us to eat with our hands. I have to wish my dad was here. My mom would love this Gemara. I'll tell you about it later. We were never allowed to eat with our hands. I have a great parenting story. This just took place in my house. I saw one of my kids reaching into the salad bowl. I said, get a fork. My wife is literally holding a cucumber in her hand that she picked out of the salad with her. And I didn't see that piece. I wouldn't have said anything to my kid. And the kid looks across the table at my wife and we all just broke into laughter. All right, says the Gemara, what's the raya that food that's eaten with bread is considered to be tavshil? Hatanya, the Brisa writes, this is of a hatanya that's benichusa. It's in support of what we're doing, not against. Hanoder minat tavshil. If a person makes a neder about cooked foods, aser b'chol minei tavshil, v'aser b'tzli b'shalach v'muvushal, v'aser b'hitrios, rakos. These are some types of gourds, some types of pumpkins, whatever. Shehachol and ochlen bahen pitan. These things are all eaten with pita. They're all eaten with bread, and therefore all of them are begeder tavshil, and they're all aser. So we see a raya brewer from this brisa that a food that is eaten with bread is considered to be a tavshil. The Gemara says, what?
And bread is not.
No, bread is considered.
Bread is cooked also.
Yeah, no, we're not talking about bread. We're talking about the other foods. That's a good question. I presume that's the case. No.
It's a tavshil. It's cooked.
Bread is not eaten with bread.
Well, you will see on the top. Well, you might want to see the next page before you give me your raya, because the Gemara says that there were some people. Yep, I'm a bit. See, when you know all of Shas, it gets confusing as to what's 12 lines ahead. I have that. It's
I wouldn't know.
I wouldn't know. I wouldn't know. I can only foreshadow because I learned this today. But if you ask me tomorrow what today's daf is about, well, that's why you're here. You get to keep us honest. Says the Gemara, Eini, is it in fact true that these foods, these gourds were eaten? We're picking up on the line in the Gemara here about the hitrios rakos she'acholin ochlan ben pitan, that they would eat. The people who were chola would eat these soft gourds. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Yirmiyah cholash. First of the long lines, 6 lines from the bottom of the page. Rabbi Yirmiyah got sick. Al legabe hahu asya. There was a healer who went to him la asyuha to heal him. Chazakara to machas bebese, and when he walked in, he saw that there was this squash, this gourd that was sitting in his house, and the doctor spun around and left. Shav gave an afak. Omar, he called out as he was walking out the door. Malach mavsa isle ledein bevesa. The malach mavs is sitting around in this house. Ve'ana e'ol asa yaseh. I'm going to go in there and try and solve it. You're eating foods that are seemingly dangerous for you. We just said that cholim eat this type of gourd, but this story teaches us that they don't eat it, and not only that, you're a goner. With this disease, you should never be eating this food. So which one is it? Is this gourd good for you, or is the gourd not good for you? Says the Gemara, lo kasha ha berikiche ha be'ashune. It depends if it's soft, which is good for you. That's what the Ran says at the bottom of the page. The Ran, 4 lines from the bottom, berikiche, that's mahalu, that's good for you. And be'ashune, that's kashin, those are bad for you. So that's the distinct. What?
So to get it soft, you have to cook.
For sure, true. But the question is, can you even eat the hard one? And the answer is from the Gemara. I shouldn't say the answer. The Gemara says it's not good for you. It's kosher. It's bad for you. So for a person who's sick, maybe for a person that's all we're talking about now is sick people. We don't know what it's like in general. Rava bar Ula Amar, ha bekara gufe, and ha begave dekara. One's talking about the outside part of the kara, of the squash, and the other's talking about the inside parts of the squash. And there's a difference between them. To Amar Rav Yehuda, luliva dekara besilka. There are parts of the gourd that you should eat with leeks, and luliva de kisna bekutcha, and there are parts of flax trees that you should eat with kutach, which is this milk-based dish that we see throughout Shas, and these things are all good for you. And the Gemara says, let's keep the second one a secret. The davar zeh aser leomro bifnei am haaretz. You're not allowed to tell the amei haratzim about the luliva de kitna bekutcha. They're allowed to take pieces of flax and mix it with the kutach. The reason why we didn't want them to do that is the Ran says 2 lines from the bottom, this is not a good reason to yank out the pishtan. I don't know why, but that's what the Ran says. You have to see Mefarshim for deeper reasons, but that's what the Gemara says. Rava Amar Man Cholen, in this story, when we were not in the story, in the Brisa, who was considered the Chola? We said that that ve'aser behitrios rakos she'achulin ochlen ben pitan. Who are the cholin? So the Gemara says in the name of Rabbah, he's talking about the Rabbanon. He's talking about the rabbis. We know that Torah is mateshes kocho shel adam. That if a person is really, I'm not talking about people like us. I'm talking about people who learn 12 hours a day, 15 hours a day, 20 hours a day. As Torah's mateshes kocho shel, it wipes you out if you're really doing it the right way. It's exhausting. And Rava Lataime, he has a raya. To Amar Rava, turning to the top of Mem Testament base, and we're going to wrap up to the top of Nun Amid Aleph, and then we'll stop. Kiman Matzlinan al Ktsire ve'al Mariye. Who is it that we hold like in regards to davening for those who are Ktsire and those who are Mariye? 2 different languages. If you take a look at the Mefarish up here, the Mefarish says the bracha of Ktsire is Rofe Chole Amo Yisrael, and Mariye is Al Pleitas Sofrein. One's talking about sick people, and the other's talking about rabbis. It says the Gemara, Kiman Kirib Yosi. Now, side sugya, fascinating side sugya. Take a look at the Ran. The Ran on the top line, Dibur Hamaskal Kiman Kirib Yosi, writes as follows: Damar bePerak Kama de Rosh Hashanah, Adam Nidon Bechol Yom. Rabbi Yossi was of the opinion that we have to daven for these things every single day. According to the Rabbanon, who say that the psak of our health was determined on Rosh Hashanah, once the din was made on Rosh Hashanah, ain tefila mo'elas lahen. Machlokas Tanaim. Is it kedai to daven for someone who's sick if it's not around the Rosh Hashanah season? We're in the middle of the year. So this is a machlokas in the Tanaim. Obviously, we paskin like the shita that it's Kirav Yossi, that we have a din every day to daven for people. We storm the heavens when people are sick. That's what we should be doing. That's good. And we also, the Ikaron, believe that you can uproot a gzera. It's a shtickle kasha on the shita of the Rabbanon, but nevertheless, this is what the machlokas is about. Anyways, back in the Gemara on the second line, Mida Amar Ktsire Umiriye, because it says that there's 2 things, Shmamina Ktsire Mamish, one's talking about people who are sick, and the other is talking about Miriye, who are those the Rabbanon. Maybe from the word roeh, maybe the rabbis, shepherds could be, or it could just be that something bad is from the word raz happening in their life. But that's what the Gemara says, that our Gemara was talking about the Chachamim, was talking about the Rabbanon when it referenced Cholim. We had said that if a person makes a neder about a tavshil, that he is mutter be'ava, he's allowed to eat thick food. Says the Gemara, mas nisan de lo kebavloi. Our Mishnah is not like the Babylonians. Damar abzera bavloi tipshoi ta'achle lachma belachma. They would eat one grain-based food with another grain-based food. What is this talking about? They'd eat bread and they'd dip it in porridge or oatmeal or some type of food like that. They're looking to gain weight. That's not exactly the way to keep things thin. Amar Rav Chizda, can someone please ask a question to the nakdane hutzal? Nakdanim are people who are very particular. Take a look at the Ran, 8 lines down. Dibra hamaschal nakrane, different than our language of nakdane. She'ochlin b'nekius. They eat very cleanly. Some of my kids do that, and some of my kids don't do that. And some of my kids have food all over their face and they don't know. But some of even at a young age, they're like, no, I need a napkin. I've got something on my face, different profiles. So some of them are nakdanim and some of them are not. The Ran continues, Lashon acher nakdane she medaktikin ba'achilason. They're very careful about the foods. Here's how you hold this. Here's what you do with that. I have 2 Southern parents. You got to hold the fork just like this with your elbow off the table when you're eating soup. Rules that we all broke by the time we entered elementary school. So the Gemara says, who can talk to these people about how to eat? Anyways, the Gemara says, Hadein daisa, heichan ma'ale lemechla. What is the right way to eat porridge? The Gemara says, do we say, techite belachma dechite, my porridge that's made of wheat, I'm going to eat with bread that's made of wheat? Udesare belachma desare. And if it's barley type of porridge, that's what I should eat with barley bread. Odilma, or perhaps do we invert? Dechite betesare, udesare bechite, or do we mix and match them? This is the question that they wanted them to ask them. And the Gemara says, Rava achle bechasise. Rava ate porridge bechasise. So this, according to some of the Mefarshim, if you look in the second part of the Mefaresh, the first answer is Haymalafes Pito Bechasise. They would dip it into this, but we still don't know what it is. Maseches Psachim Kimcha de Avishuna Kemach Shel Klaus Seorim Shelo Heviu Shlish. They're underripe types of Seorim. Miyavshan also betanur v'klufenhein. You would then dry them out in an oven, and according to some, they actually had a sweet taste. So that was the kind of porridge that he would eat. Rabba bar Rav Huna, ashkechel Rav Huna de ka'achel daisa be'etz ba'aseh. So Rabba bar Rav Huna saw Rav Huna eating porridge with his bare hands. Amar le, amai ka'achel mar biyade. Why are you eating with your hands? So this is the line. I'm going to call my mom when we're done. Amar le, hachi amarab, daisa be'etz ba'aseh, basim. It tastes better when you eat with your hands. This is going to be a new, I'm going to make like a food map for my mom's table. That's going to be the whole tablecloth. It tastes better when you eat with your hands. I know. My mom would rather me eat a lot of other foods before porridge with my hand. Yeah. And the Gemara says that's only talking about eating with one finger. All the more so if you eat with 2 fingers. All the more so if you eat with 3 fingers. Not so bad to eat with your hands. We'll see in a moment that's one of the concerns. But some of the Amoraim didn't like that. Very true though. And disgusting all at the same time. Rav says to his son Reb Chia, and similarly, Rav Huna l'Rabba Berei. If somebody invites you to eat porridge, you should travel ad parsa. You should go a nice far long walk. Oh wow, you want to come for breakfast? What are you serving? We're serving daisa. We're serving porridge. Wow. Okay. So up to 1 parsa, you're obligated to walk, or you should be willing to walk. L'meichal bisra detura. If you're serving steak, so instinctively we all know the distance should be further, and the Gemara highlights it's a 3-to-1 ratio of our affection for meat over that of porridge. Ad tlasa parsin, until you should walk 3. Amar le Rav l'Chia Berei. Rav says to Chia his son, and v'chein Amar le Rav Huna l'Rabba Berei. Same peoples. Kol midam, anything that you ingest, lo tiflot kame rabcha. You should not spit in front of your Rebbe. Levar mean kara v'daisa, except for kara, which is gourd, vidaisa, which is porridge. Shehein doman lepsilta shel aver. It's almost like a piece of lead that's in your mouth. In other words, they're very hard to digest. We're not talking about our version of porridge nowadays, where our foods are perfect.
Super process.
Yeah, it's so easy to eat our foods. I mean, there are people who struggle with them, gluten, whatever, but by and large, we don't have trouble processing. There are foods that we know stay in our system a little bit longer. And not only are you allowed to be polet lifnei rabcha, but ve'afilu kame shivur malka, even in front of Shavur, who was a king, you're allowed to do that polut. That's considered appropriate. Now let's get back into the sugya of eating with your bare hands. Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda. Chad achil daisa. What?
Very famous Gemara, yeah.
I have never seen it until today.
Yeah.
Chad achil daisa be'etzba'aseh. One person would eat porridge with his hands. Chad achil behutza. And one of them ate them with a little stick, like a little wood. I guess the equivalent would be one of the old wooden spoons that we used to use to mix noodles when we were little kids. Do they make those anymore? I don't even know. We don't have any in our house. They do? Yeah, we don't have that. We use them for like salad. We have that, but not for hot stuff. Amarle, one says to the other, Amarle da'achil behutza, le da'achil be'etzba'aseh. The person who's eating with silverware, woodware, says to the person who's eating with his fingers, Ad mosai atama achilani soascha. How long are you going to continue feeding me that nasty stuff under your nails? Every time you stick your hand in there, I have to eat from you. They're eating from the same bowl. Very good. Of course. So he's basically asking the rhetorical question of, that's disgusting. Why would you eat with your bare hands? And Amar Le, the person who was the achil be'etzba'aseh, he asks a question, le da'achil behutza, ad masai atamachilani rokcha. And how long do I have to eat your backwash? You take your spoon, you scoop it in, you lick it, and then you put it back in the bowl. No, thank you. I'll pass. Who knew that there were germs 2,000 years ago? That's what the Gemara says. What a strange Gemara. It's not even a maskana. It's just weird. I'm also surprised that there's this awareness of like saliva and dirty fingers. That's like a very now thing. Like, oh, yeah, the germs under your nails. You know, like now in surgeries, when they scrub and they make you wash your hands for 3 full minutes. There's a timer that is by surgical stations in an OR. You have to wash your hands for 3 minutes. That's a really long time. And then you put on latex gloves and there's no germs. So, okay, those are the policies. But I'm just shocked. I was a little surprised. Okay, next, 2 lines before the wide lines. Rabbi Yehuda Reb Shimon Aisu L'Kamayhu Belusfayan. Some type of fig or date that was very difficult to digest. Rabbi Yehuda achal, Reb Shimon lo achal. Only some people would eat them. Amar le Rabbi Yehuda, my time lo achal mar. Why won't you eat it? Amar le Reb Shimon, elu ein yotzim mibnei me'ayin kol ikar. These things don't digest very well. They never leave your body. And Amar le Rabbi Yehuda, givaldik kol shekin shenis mechalei lemachar. At least we'll have a slow release calorie. You know, they're like for people who don't fast well. There's like a list of foods that are slow release calories. So that good. They take longer to break down and it lasts longer in your body. Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Yosef commented of Tarfon. Rabbi Yehuda was sitting in front of Tarfon. Amar le Rabbi Tarfon, Hayom panecha tzehubin. Your face is golden. It's shining. Amar le. That's because Emesh yesterday Yatzu avadecha l'sadeh. The servants went out into the field. Ve'viu lanu teradin. They brought us these foods to eat. Ve'achalnum below melach. We ate them without salt. V'machalnum b'melach. Had we eaten them with salt, kol sheken shaypanenu hatzubin. It makes your face glow. Amra hahi matronisa l'Rabbi Yehuda. So somebody looks over at Rabbi Yehuda and says, "It's nice that your face is all shiny, but it looks like more v'ravi. You're a more, you're a rebbe v'ravi, and you are saturated with wine." So she was under the assumption that the reason why his face was all shiny was because he drank too much. That the afterglow of a little too much alcohol. Amar Allah, and he says to her, we could use a little more of this in our culture. Heimnusa biyada de'ahi itza. I'm making a guarantee to you, this woman who had this concern. To imna, I do not drink wine. Ela kiddusha ve'avdalta, except for kiddush and for havdalah. Ve'arba kaseh de pischa, and the 4 cups of wine for Pesach. Ve'chugrani tzidei min pesach ad atzeres, and I have something tied on my head because of the headache that I have from the 4 cups of wine until atzeres.
Yeah, that's the famous one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There was a study published last year that Orthodox teens in high school binge drink more than their secular American counterparts. Yes. It's part of the work that we're doing in the community with parenting initiatives, but for another time. I'm just saying that we need to get ourselves together because we're doing a disastrous job. We actually went to a donor.
That may be the most terrifying thing I've ever heard.
Yeah. We actually went to a donor, just to be a Gilui Milsa. We went to a donor and asked them for $2 million for a program that we were running. We showed them this data and they said, I don't believe it. I'm like, I daven in an Orthodox shul. I trust me. The kids have access. She's like, where is the access? Explain it to me. I'm like, what? I'm going to tell her about Kiddush Club? It's a Chilul Hashem Doraisa. I'm not going to tell her about Kiddush Club. I said, well, parents have alcohol in their homes. They invite friends over there. The kids have access. So unfortunately, they have access. There were 4 people on the call. This woman who is not Orthodox, she's Jewish. She's married to a guy. And these 3 people who were all Yidden from guys like me, she wouldn't give us the grant for that one reason. She's like, I just don't believe. She couldn't believe it. Chilul Hashem.
Believe that from Jews.
To that level. I can show you the study. It's terrifying. Okay, for another time. We all just need to stay under control. Ella says the Gemara, none of this was what? You agree?
No.
Oh. Ella says the Gemara, that's not why my face was shining. Rather, Chachmas Adam Ta'ir Panav. The wisdom of man is what causes for Ha'aras Panim. Amar lehahud tzeduki le Rabbi Yehuda. Somebody looks over at Rabbi Yehuda, same person. Panecha domen I kimalave ribis I kimegad lechazir. And these are very profitable businesses. And he says, you must be doing so well. Your face is shining. So Amar le Yehudai, we Jews, tarvaihu asiran. Those things we don't do those things. We're not malave ribis. Again, heter iska, we're not malave ribis, and we also don't raise chazirin. That's asur. Ella, the reason why my face is shining in this particular circumstance is because esrim ve'arba Beisakise, Isli, mean Beisa ad Be Medrasha. I pass over 24 bathrooms on the way from my house to the base medrash. At any time that I need a bathroom, and I can use them. So the Gemara here seems to say that if one is careful to go to the bathroom when they need, that leads to some type of ziv hapanim. And we know on the flip side that you can get very ill from holding in hadrikon and these other diseases that exist. Okay.
For hundreds of years, that's all we could be wearing for usurers. I mean, it's with going, and not amongst ourselves. I'm saying that's what we were designed to do, was to lend money out and to earn interest.
By going.
Yeah. I'm saying.
Mutter. Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
You're saying we're not involved in that, but no, that's what we're involved in.
Right.
Hundreds of thousands.
There has been over the years, I didn't hear this recently, but over the years, there's been this anti-Semitic trope that the Jews would only charge interest to non-Jews. Look how terrible that is. So the appropriate way to understand it is, wait 1 second. You said this to me a couple of days ago, maybe a couple of weeks ago, like this is the way that banks work. They make money, but your family, pasnish, you're going to charge your brother interest. That's not shaykh. You're my family. Okay, you're not my blood family, but you're my family. You, I don't know, interest. I don't know you. It's not a din in Goy versus Jew inherently. It's just that if you're a Yid, you're my family. I'm not charging you interest. It's ridiculous. Okay. We have to finish at some point. Let's go. Rabbi Yehuda, Kad Azil Bei Medrash, when Rabbi Yehuda would go into the base medrash, Shakil Gulfa Al Kasva, he would carry some type of barrel on his shoulder. Amar, he says, Gedola Malacha Shemechabedes Es Be'aleha. Doing the hard work, that is Mechabedes Be'aleha, that's good for me, it gives me a sense of kavod. And he would actually use this to sit on it in the base medrash. Shimon Shakil Tzana Al Kasva, he would also carry a basket of some kind. Amar Gedola Malacha Shemechabedes Es Be'aleha. Quick story. The Bisud Rabbi Yehuda, Nafkas, the wife of Rabbi Yehuda went out to the marketplace, Naktas Imra, she got some wool, of the Glima de Hutvi, and she made a very good coat for the family. Now, unlike our culture where the coats are gender divided, this coat was just a large piece of cloth, and it was used by both her and her husband. Kad Nafkas the Shukah, when she would go out, Michsi Abe, she would cover herself in this, probably a shawl type of garment. V'chad Nafik Rabbi Yehuda litzluye, and when he would go out to go daven, have a Michsi umatzle. And when he would, it's not a beged of Anisha. It's a blanket. It's like a blanket. It's yeah. You're thinking because we're not used to unisex clothing like that. Not in our culture.
Anything today that a woman wears, you can't put it on.
Anything that is specific to women wearing, correct? Yeah. So let's say you have a poncho, which is gender neutral. You and your wife can both wear it.
Women's clothes, I think they button them on the
Today, Nachanami, I agree with you. But back in the day, that wasn't the standard. By the way, I bought my winter coat right here, zips on the way that a woman's coat does. It's from Canada. It zips the wrong way. Yeah, and by the way, messes with your brain when you try to figure out how to zip it up. Totally messed up. Totally. Okay, so 3 lines from the bottom, the Gemara says that when Rabbi Yehuda would put on this cloak, this coat, v'chad nifsi bei, have a mevarich, baruch she'atani me'il. He would make a bracha that he was able to be enwrapped in a coat. Okay. Zim lechada, one time, says the Gemara, Gazar Reb Shimon ben Gamliel ta'anisa. There was a tainus that was nigzar. And Rabbi Huda lo asa lebeit tanisa, but he didn't go there for the tainus to daven. Amrin lay, they said to Reb Shimon ben Gamliel, who had called the tainus, lo isle kisuya, he doesn't have a covering to come out. It's frigid, whatever the circumstance there. He didn't have any clothing. Shardar leglima, so he sent Rabbi Huda a coat below kabel. He wouldn't take it, and then Dalit Sifsa, when he picked up the cushions of his house, take a look at the Mefaresh. Dalit Sifsa, he picked up the mat, and magically, or I should say, Derech Nes, the Amar Leila Shluche, Chazi Ma'ika, see what's here, and he had found some coins. Mihu, even though it was true that he found these coins, Lo Nichale the Ishane v'Hadein Alma. But I don't want to do this. I don't want to benefit from the physical world. These were the great levels of the Tanaim and many greats over the years, and the Amoraim, people who like. It does like the story of Rebbe, like the Yodayim Eila Lo, like I got no hana from this world. We're not shaykh to these things. It's a whole nother level. All right, we're going to stop right here. I'll post a recording for tomorrow. I'll keep you posted Wednesday, Thursday on the WhatsApp chat. Wishing you all a beautiful night.
Tomorrow's Daf is almost as exciting as today.
Don't tell me.